true connection, how do you know if it's a true connection versus a trauma bond? So in this case, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think a trauma bond could be a true connection. In fact, sometimes trauma bonds are opportunities to heal on profound level, and that may be why you were brought together. Trauma is a profound experience, and to connect over the experience of trauma is equally profound, right? So this is kind of like going back to the good bad splitting that occurs when we talk about these things, and I would argue that even experts talk about these things in good bad ways, right? But it seems like what we are teasing out here when we say true connection, it's a deep connection for sure, and certainly a true one. But what are we connecting about? What is this connection intended to show us about ourselves? What is the learning and the lesson that can evolve from a trauma bond, right? And this is why I say that it speaks to spirit, because once we can tap into spirit's perspective on it, then we might understand the nature of the connection, which is to say that sometimes we trauma bond to people who reflect back to us something that is at work within us, and it is functioning in such a way that it has constricted our energy, right? And the energies become so rigid and hard and tight that it is hard to relax. It's hard to trust that it will unfold. It's hard to listen to your own voice and intuition. It just feels like everything is screaming at you. And when you're with someone who gets that, it's really hard to let it go, because you finally feel seen and understood, right? But of course, you feel seen and understood around something that makes it impossible to relax, that makes it impossible to really connect from a place of abundance, from a place of being filled up, from a place of trusting and knowing, right? And so that's what makes it such a paradoxical relationship and very difficult to break out of, which I think connected to another story that we had, which was our question that we had, which was, how do you end an off-on relationship? Like, how do you move beyond it? And really the essence of that is an internal process, right? I'm not someone who says you have to end all relationships in order to affect healing. I think healing can occur in the context of relationship, and I think healing can occur when you are single and not in a romantic relationship, but healing almost always occurs in relationship to someone, or in relationship to a community, or in relationship to connection, right? And I'm also someone who believes in human design. So we're all going to have a different sort of inheritance for this dispositionally. Some people, when they cut off, their when they're able to collect their energy in an inner space and find some calm and quiet, and they can connect in, then that's useful for them to create sort of what we call an anchoring experience, so that when they go back out into the fray, or when they go back out into related experiences, they use that as what is brain spotting. They call it a body resource, but they're able to utilize that experience of creating calm and spaciousness around the self, so that when you're back in the related space, you can utilize that as a way to reinforce your boundaries and then stay in relationship to someone, right? Then the other thing is true, where some people feel like they are able to do that better when they are in relationship to someone. If romantic relationships are too charged, with a women's circle, for example, or with other people who in like group therapy, or with other people who connect around the same things, and together you kind of pitter and patter and talk about these experiences, and as you share ideas and you vocalize these things, and you connect and you touch and you move energy when you in your yoga class and what have you, suddenly things start to click in a different way. So we're all dispositionally different, I believe, in the way that we're able to cultivate that sense of felt security internally. But the way that we end these trauma bond, on again, off again relationships is by learning those boundaries and implementing them within yourself, and then in the relational space. Because what happens is, once you do that, now it stops becoming about trauma now, right? Because experience stops becoming fuel for the fire, right? And instead, you are finding ways to relax the nervous system well enough that now it can start, now the hippocampus can turn on and it can start integrating some of that information that got stuck there when the alarm bell of your amygdala was just wow, 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 right? So now it's an embodied practice. So when I say establishing your boundaries, I talked about being able to breathe and create spaciousness. What I'm saying is, first you got to work on this on the body level, right? You have to have methods by which you can calm the nervous system, whether some people do that best in co-regulation, ideally with not so charged relationships, right? So platonic relationship, community, that kind of thing. Or some people do it better in the inner space, and that's okay too. Whatever works for you, finding ways to calm the nervous system because it's embodied at this point, and then reframing thought, right? Starting working with reframing thought. And we start connecting mind and body. Amygdala quiets down, hippocampus turns on, we start tagging information properly, we stop making automatic negative predictions and then making them happen through things called projected introjects, or if you're more of a new age person, you might call it law of attraction, right? But the psychoanalytic word for essentially the same thing is projected introjects. And we start being more fluidly open and receptive and softened to receive experience as it comes and accept experience as it comes. Now, you might put this into action. You might want to affect this. But if your partner is not equally motivated, what happens is this may put a wrench in that, let's say, toxic pattern that has kept the trauma alive between you, right? So that is when there's a choice that has to be made, right? And that can be a painful severance because you did connect, honestly. Trauma bond it's not a true connection. Of course it's a true connection. Of course it is. You're connecting over one of the most profound things you've probably ever experienced in your life. And that's why it's so difficult to extricate yourself from the system of trauma reenactment, of repetition, because you empathize so deeply with what they went through because it so deeply connects with what you went through that to move on, to grow, to honor your own expansion, to establish those boundaries, to advocate for your autonomy feels like abandonment. And you know so well what abandonment is and how awful that is. And you don't want to be the person to inflict it on someone else. And that's when you have to really step into understanding on a profound level what the true bounds of emotional responsibility are. Right? And that's a difficult one and for a longer live stream. But I'm going to be making more videos about that topic in the future, so you can stay tuned to my IGTV for that one.